name is Pam Barger, and I was born in Lincoln in 1954, back when Lincoln was smaller, when we moved out to our house when I was 2. 56th Street was the end of Lincoln. We lived at about 56th and Vine. Great neighborhood with lots of kids to play with and lots of grown-ups who took care of everybody. My dad built homes, and my mom did everything else. I have 2 younger sisters, Vicki and Kay. I still live in Lincoln. I never have moved away. I've done some travel with bands, but I like Lincoln. I like the people here. I like the plains. I went to St. John's Catholic School for the first 6 years, and basically East High after that. And I went to college late. It's kind of a funny chronology when you ask what I do for a living and what I do. I was planning to go to college and major in either writing or music, which was very important to me. And in my last year in high school, when I was 17, I was singing in places in Lincoln like the Clayton House, etc., with a guy named Rick Evans from Zager and Evans. The people my age will remember a song called In the Year 2525.
I think I heard you do that because I heard them.
Yes, I wore evening dresses and high heels and sang folk songs with my guitar. And I was 17 or so, and when it came down to it, I remember thinking, okay, English or music, and I thought, I liked to write, and I'd had some success with writing, but I thought I hadn't had enough life to write about. And so I had decided on music, and then I was on the road playing music and thought, well, I can always go to college, no problem. And then I got married and had a kid and played solo, played different ways, ended up with a band called Sour Mash that traveled, toured a lot. It was a 7-piece band. So I just never quite got to college for a long time. At the time, I just sang. I didn't play anything. But the economy went south, and I had another child. I have 2 daughters, Anna and Faye, and 1 son now. So that's when I decided I needed to teach piano. I bought a piano, started practicing. Ended up going to college when I was, I was 31. And it took me 7 years, and I started getting A's, and somehow that became an albatross, so I ended up with high distinction, all A's. Graduated in '92. I majored in piano, and Auden Rovnan was my teacher. He's a wonderful, wonderful pianist. Let's see. I did take some writing classes at the university toward the end there, and Charlie Stubblefield and Judy Slater come to mind. And later, after I graduated, I audited some courses at Wesleyan with Bill Clefcorn in poetry. He was really, really helpful. I started teaching piano then 21 years ago, and I still teach piano, and that's my primary source of income, and certainly not writing. And I also have done some land development that came through my parents and their home building, and that's really out of my brain style, I can say, without question, as an artist type, figuring out how to put roads on dirt. Not easy for me, but I do that, and then I still play with bands. I play with the Fab Tones now, and I have for 15, 20 years, and we play on weekends. And the plains have influenced my writing, I think, in subtle ways and sometimes overt ways. I write about walking on the prairie. That's pretty plainsy. I like to camp, and I like to garden a lot, and so it seems to me that outdoors, in one way or another, figures into my writing. I think the ethic, if you call it that, of don't take yourself all that seriously, sort of a plains way of seeing the world, and don't be a show-off. Those plains ways of looking at the world, I think, work their way into my writing. I'd have to start with my parents mom read to me a lot, and I just came out loving books, loving to be read to, loving to read, loving letters, and everything about it. And my dad, probably more than my mom, I would just see reading for pleasure and reading for enjoyment, and that just seemed like what people did. And I always remember just being taught the first word, look, and seeing those two O's and they look like eyes, and the letters have a sound, and it was, wow, cool. Unlocking a door, and I never stopped. Teachers all along had influences on me, but when I was at East High, a teacher who just retired, this is his first year off, Jim Holochek, really encouraged me, and I think more than saw proficiency in my writing, saw some kind of point of view that I think makes me kind of an odd duck. And he encouraged me and had me writing a lot, and I think that sustained me. As for now, I write with a group, or I belong to a writers group called Prairie Trout. And they're all very good writers, all published a lot, and that sometimes keeps me going over times when all the deadlines help keep me moving. Just how well they write gives me inspiration, or ideas they bring up. Margie Sizer and Twyla Hansen in that group both write poetry, and Karen Shoemaker is a fiction writer, and Mary Pfeiffer writes books. It's hard. I've been really lucky. We've been together for a long time. I have kind of a funny background, though. I write a lot of poetry now, but I did not read much poetry. I remember high school thinking a lot of it I needed help to understand. It was difficult, and I do remember the E.E. Cummings kind of stuff from back then was liberating to me because it wasn't metered, and I could just play with words. And so I all along wrote poetry, but did not read much until joining this writers group. And it was through Marge and Twyla's poetry that I started reading poets and getting back into it. I love many authors, but I don't see myself as consciously adopting a style. Maybe way back, I wrote a mystery when I was in second grade or so, and I remember the Happy Hollister mystery books that crept into my writing. When I was in second grade, I remember the teacher gave us a list of words, and giraffe was one of them, and we were to write a story combining those. That must have been Sister Elizabeth. And I just remember that is so fun. It was illuminating. And in third grade, I wrote a book called Unlocking the Doors to Space. And then under it says, illustrated by the author. I thought I was going to be an astronomer when I grew up, and it was about 6 pages and had pictures, and I just wanted to write. Always have liked to write. Well, when I had my first daughter, I read a book called The Mother Knot. I don't know if it's still around, by Jane Lazar, but it was really a good book for me at the time because it was kind of a hard transition to being home with a little one all the time. And she wrote in a journal. And she wrote in a journal that didn't have just one page for each day. She wrote till she was finished writing, and if she didn't feel like writing, she didn't write. So I went out to the maybe Nebraska bookstore and bought one of those big hardbound art books and started journal writing. And every day it seemed like I'd put her down for a nap, make my cup of coffee, and sit there and write. And it's not stuff I tend to want to read through. They can probably get up to my head by now, and it's kind of alarming how much I go over the same things. But it kept my writing alive, and through a time when I wasn't in any writing class or in any writing group or being read by anybody. I have to laugh because when I was assembling this group of poems for today, I realized that writing in cars must be a huge inspiration to me, because I find poems about riding in cars all over the place. I'd never noticed that before. Another big one is open time and solitude, and probably most writers feel that way, and I don't get even close to enough of it these days. But having time to just weed, I always think of sitting in the garden and weeding, and letting thoughts settle right when I'm ready, mess around with it. Other things I return to are parenting and family. Music is sometimes the subject. A lot of times it's in poems. Oddly, I notice classical music is in there a lot more than rock music, even though I play rock music also. Gardening and nature, walking and jogging, even my piano students. Writing with other writers is good inspiration for me. And then another big one is affect. I think I struggle with, I know not to take myself too seriously, but it feels very serious when I'm feeling something, and so I try to write until I don't take myself so seriously, I guess. And a long time ago I took one of those Myers-Briggs tests and personality tests, and I pegged the meter as an introvert, and I sort of thought that didn't make sense, because I'm not an extrovert, but I'm not too shy. But it does mean more that I gather information from within myself more than outside, which puts me in danger of becoming kind of inbred in my thinking. But it doesn't take much for me to have a lot to think about. And like when I was in college and when teaching and had 2 little kids, I would just crave those few weeks at the end of UNL, and when I'd be done with teaching and my kids were in school, and I could just sit out in the garden and process everything that had been building up. And I think that fits, my inspiration. 2 come to mind. One is first thing in the morning, and I don't make myself get up anymore. I used to, but sometimes if I sit down at either with pen and paper or at the computer before I'm even quite fully awake, things will start coming out that turn into, I don't exactly know where that came from, but I like it. I have a little boy now at home who's 5, Jackson, and so that makes it, early morning is now baths and breakfast and all that stuff. I don't get that so often. But I do meet once a week, pretty much I think for the last 13 years, with Karen Shoemaker and sometimes Marge Sizer, and we just start writing together and read it to each other, and it sounds kind of silly, but it's been another inspiration. I've gotten lots of things, excuse me, to use from those free writes, we call them. As far as style, I find myself, I think, influenced by music, against unconsciously. I'll read aloud, or I'll hear it in my mind, and if it doesn't, it's not, okay, I need to meter this, but the rhythm has to feel right, and the sounds of the words, and it's so frustrating when you have an idea you want to get across, but there's no pretty sounding word or appropriate sounding word to say it. I'd say my style is fairly down to earth and accessible. I was thinking about when one of my daughters was little, she phonetically wrote a book, and one line in it was, "Years passed by and she became big." And I love that, because it just shows how much reading and literature affects. I mean, that sounds literate until she became big, came in, but I just realized there's all kinds of style and voice things that come out of what I read or what I hear that I can't quite attribute, because it's just part of me by now. I do think my style includes humor and self-amusement, just having fun. I'm not always serious and trying to be deep. I also find myself taking different perspectives, or seeing myself as someone else might. Or I have one poem I might end up reading from the point of view of a worm, believe it or not. And aesthetics gets its way into just thinking about aesthetics and why it matters to me. Because, well, when I was a kid, besides wanting to be an astronomer, I wanted to be an artist. And those were the first things. And then there was music and writing, and I realized there's a common thread to all those. And aesthetics is one of them. It's just pleasing. Gardening is, for that matter, trying to decide, it's never a goal. It's just messing around with sounds or things and how they fit together. And there's also the element of self-expression. Somehow I'm getting across how I perceive the world. I can't say I'm proud of this, but I think I mostly write to myself. I know that that's not the way it's supposed to be. Sometimes there are things that I, wouldn't be appropriate to read because of that, but I try not to think of that when I'm doing the first writing. I am, though, writing a book right now for teenage music students. That's prose, and obviously that's a very specific audience, and I'll be thinking of certain piano students while I'm writing it. In my writers group, I guess I could say that. I bet everybody answers these two things. One is read a lot. You can't write in a vacuum. And experience a lot. And write a lot. And I think we shouldn't be afraid to keep after a piece. One odd little style I use is when I'm working on a poem, I print it up and I put it by the bathroom sink. Every time I go by, which is several times a day, I can sit and mess with it and have my pencil out. So there's lots of incarnations before I'm pleased with it. And then, of course, when I get it out again to share with the group or something, it goes through some more bathroom sink things. But that, something will nag at you that you realize isn't quite right, and that's the part you keep messing with. I do think seeking advice is worthy, but you have to also know yourself and know if the advice is helpful to you or not, and also not to be afraid to use the advice and also not use the advice. It's not either or. You can try things out and see if they fit, and decide it doesn't work, and go on back. You're not going to get rich writing, and so you have to remember whom you're trying to please. The first thing that comes to mind isn't the first poem, but I wanted to find it and bring it because it was, I think, just out of high school, and I was thinking about kind of rueing the fact that I was becoming less naive. And I wish I could find that because I liked the idea behind it. I still like the idea about, that being jaded is part of growing up. But I remember really working on that, waking up in the middle of the night and turning on the radio, and some song took me back. And then we lived at the edge of town, and there was what's now that Walton Trail. It was a train track, and the train went by, and the sound of that. And so that wasn't a first, but early poem.
Good evening. Thanks for coming this evening. I'm Meredith McGowan, and I'm the curator of the Heritage Room here. I'd like to welcome you to the room and also to the John H. Ames reading series. This series has actually been around for 20 years. The very first one, and here it is, was done on June 20th, 1985, and it featured Catherine Kidwell. And I don't know how many of you know. Yes, I see some heads nodding. So she was the first one of the Ames readers. However, there was another little series before that called the Poetry and Fiction series. So this was the very first one ever. This was a year before that, of April 19th, 1984. And this was Dawn Welch. And I looked at both of those just to see what they were like. And this one had a fellow introducing Don Welch. And I'm guessing you could guess maybe who it was who introduced Don Welch 21 years ago. Ted Kooser. Looked a little different then, but there he was. So that was kind of cool. There actually is a list, an alphabetical list, and there's some other people in this room who have done some reading too. An alphabetical list as well as a number list. So there's Catherine Kidwell on number 1. And I've already put Pam on there. She's 156. We've done 156 Ames programs. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, this obviously is a special collection. It's called the Jane Popieski Heritage Room. And it is basically here to promote and preserve works about and by Nebraska authors. And there are some 12,000 volumes at this point and some 3,000 authors. So it is pretty amazing. It's been redone in the last year or so, and we're pretty excited about the room and the way it looks and how it feels, and it's great to have you all here this evening. And we are open on Tuesday through Friday from 12 to 3, and on Sundays from 2 to 5, so if you want to come back and look around a little bit more, look at the artwork, check about your favorite author, that'd be great too. We'd also like to thank the Nebraska Literary Heritage Association because they're the ones who have done a lot of volunteer work over the years and established an endowment so that we can do these kinds of programs for you. Tonight we're very happy to have Pam Barger here to read for us. She lives an interesting life here in Lincoln, has lived here all of her life. She loves writing and considers herself, and this was a quote, extraordinarily lucky to belong to a writers group named Prairie Trout, a group which also includes Twyla Hansen, Mary Pfeiffer, Marge Sizer, and Karen Shoemaker. So, and I think you're all here. What can I say? Pam has also published a number of poems in journals, including West Branch, Platte Valley Review, and Nebraska Territory. She's in the process of revising a poetry manuscript entitled This Deliberate Theft of Silence, which Pam says, and also a quote, an endeavor that's been way too long in coming. Pam has also enjoyed music for years too. She's played live music since she was 17, primarily as a vocalist, but she's also done keyboard and guitar. One of the groups that she played with is Rick Evans and Pam Herbert. Now, obviously, this is Pam Herbert over here, but I'm sure some of you know what Rick Evans' claim to fame is, too, and yes? So of course. Even I know that, because I used to live in Lincoln back in the old days, too. And I've been to the Clayton House, and I've heard in the year 2525 with Sager and Evans. So anyway, she has a degree in music from UNL, and she's taught just a few piano lessons, enough that she's been inspired to start writing a book for high school and middle school students, and she's calling, at least for now, this book, You Can Have Music and a Life. Needless to say, we'll probably notice that music is a recurring theme in Pam's writing. We're happy to have Pam Barger with us. Please help me welcome her.
Thank you, Meredith, and thank you, everybody, for coming out. It's wonderful to see smiling faces, smiling familiar faces. This first poem goes out to my son, Jackson, because he's in it. It's called Dusk, Late March. This comes late March. It was one of those first balmy evenings in the spring when the sun's still up a little bit later after supper. Pale moonlight, he's chanting, dreamy, leaning back on a bag of leaves I've raked, a gaze at the hazy ringed moon. It's been a long winter together in the house, surfeit of Candyland, Mancala, Crazy Eights, but now we are easy companions, this 4-year-old and his grandmother, easy out here where the sky is infinite. I'd been raking while he climbed into his fort and jumped to the ground, climbed into his fort, jumped to the ground, climbed, jumped, the occasional question wafting my way. why don't we see stars in the daytime? But he's still now making up his song about pale moonlight as our lantern of a half moon casts its radiant blessing, gathering together his earnest, bespectacled face, the greening garden, the bags of leaves, even me. And this next one, there are several poems in here that I'm so pleased to see people who have known me virtually all my 51 years. This was from the same kind of light in the evening when it's getting dark out, but it's late, late fall, and it's about 1960. It's called Making Rooms. Kathy and Vicki and Linda and me rake scrunch and crackle autumn into leafy lines, which are walls. Bathroom here, living room here. This is the couch. Here's where you sleep. Hands chapped red, noses leaking, daylight almost done for. We make openings which lead to rooms, to rooms, to brooms. Labyrinthine, organic, a spot for the baby. Where should we do the wash? How about a window seat? Think big, kids. You've got the whole wide yard, a row of poplars with leaves yet to spill. You've got until the grown-ups call you to their darkening caves, to those yellow beckoning rectangles, to fragrance of roast beef, potatoes, onions, carrots soft and sweet. And to back up yet further, I figure this memory comes from when I was 2, because my sister, maybe 3, my sister was a baby. It's called 1957. Our car floats through fathomless dark, the baby asleep in the back seat, Dad's cigarette, a small orange-tipped wand. Mary had a little lamb, Mom's oboe voice calls me deep into her lap. Dad's mouth turns up a little, easy. White lines converging fast, passing car, looming, then vanishing, a tree. Farmhouse with one window lit. Filling station, nobody about. All planets in solitary orbits, as are we. Our thin headlights parting the friendly black, just enough to show where we're sure to go. I noticed as I was putting this collection together that car rides are all over the place in my poems, and I never once noticed that connection until now, and I hate to think how many of these. But this one is also involved with a car ride, and it's called Here's to Every Skunk. Here's to every skunk nearly hit, ones we never even noticed. Here's to dead ones smushed by cars less fortunate, strewn fur, white and black, glistening guts, unfurled tail, and somewhere on the asphalt, the crucial sack of stink. Dad took care to steer far clear for fear that odor might ride along. Here's to the 6-year-old in the back seat making a scene about the stench, fumbling for that mystery birthday bottle to suspend beneath her nose. Toilet water. Toilet water. There is much of life ahead that defies explanation. Too happy. I am giddy this sunny, warm, long-awaited morn in May, the month of Mary, and at last this moment, the whole of St. John's School flying right out of 2 buses into Bethany Park. We will swing to the sky and jump off airborne. We will slide and go round Mary, peek into windows of the Boy Scout cabin, try its locked doors and windows again and again. We will stuff legs into burlap sacks, race and fall, compare Cheetos and peanut butter and pop. After lunch, I hear of a weed-hidden tunnel at the edge of the playground, secret pathway under the road. 3rd grader, I'm small enough that on hands and knees I can proceed. Cobwebs, bugs, ebbing light, a gradual narrowing. I am alone. How long have I been alone? I barely can sense the tiny moon of light behind me, and now the only sound is the slapping of my knees and hands on dirt backward as fast as they can go, and finally, sun. But no shouts, no laughter, no quarreling. At the far end of the playground, near yellow buses, stand silent lines of kids. Still, my heart is sick that night when Mom kisses me in my bed. All I want is to be alone. No, don't leave me. All I want is this feeling to be gone. In time, I will learn the exuberance lesson for dreamers of flying, floating. Let go gravity only to a measured extent. Untold danger lurks in limitless sky. Which flows into this poem called Increase. This is one of my earlier poems from when I started again to write poetry, inspired by Margie Sizer and Twyla Hansen, who are in a writers group I belong to. This one is about dreaming of flying. It's called Increase. Moving through air during sleep, she longs for more than just rising and letting down. Human, she's never learned to fly. Now, substance loses its pull, and feeling the soft flap of fabric against skin, she chooses abandon. Her head reels. Cumulus come larger, larger. But look, the small house with those beloved inside now is small, barely distinct from other rectangles below. She turns back before she's lost her way. In the day, she walks a rock road, watching a hawk's smooth glide. Up high, there is a skilled shift of strong wing, a sweet turn cloudward. She studies, ready to take with her to sleep, ways of control. I don't write fiction, or not much fiction. I always say I don't really have the imagination for it. However, this poem is called Only a Seventh Grader, and I have to sing the epigraph. Yellow matter custard, dripping from a dead dog's eye. That comes from Lennon and McCartney's I Am the Walrus. Lovely. Only a seventh grader, yet they wanted me to sing with them. Really, they wanted me for my fire, the way the beat worked me, the way I took the music and let it move me, however, singing not pretty, but with guts and power, not even worrying about looking cool in my lavender skirt and sweater outfit. I am the Eggman. They are the Eggmen. I am the walrus. Cuckoo-ka-joop. I practiced in front of the mirror until Mom came home. It was too soon to let her know about my secret job singing backup with the Beatles. This one also this is by request. I have a student, or had a student, Katie Yasa, who has turned out to be a wonderful writer. One time when she was little, she was telling me about monsters and how she was going to keep the monsters at bay, and I asked her if she believed in monsters, and she said, with an imagination like mine, I can imagine a whole town, so monsters are not a problem. This one, Margie said, I like to write about things I know nothing about, and I took that and made this poem called Stuff I Do. When I perform brain surgery, I always wash my hands, put on latex gloves before getting out the saw, make certain the patient is knocked out cold. I stick a tiny camera in there to magnify everything before I start to slice. When I'm a diplomat in Japan, I speak carefully so I don't say penis instead of cheers, raising my sake. When in doubt, I bow. I keep my fingernails clean, shoes shiny. I stick to the script except when Madeline gives dumb instructions. In that case, I wing it. When I fly a Boeing 707, I turn the steering wheel up when it's time to leave the runway. Set the cruise control when I get the plane high enough. Then I give messages to passengers, weather in Phoenix, cracks about not forgetting jackets. Conducting the Berlin Philharmonic, I always use my biggest baton, wave my arms in larger and smaller arcs. If anybody plays sour, I glare. When the music makes my chest fill up, I close my eyes and let it. When the music's over, I always stop. Some imagination. This is a short poem called Morning Glories. I pull green vine through a tangle of its own making, around itself 10, 20 times, then a neighbor, then the post, and I'm thinking how familiar this rampant life, reaching and circling, clutching away without a plan, maybe to choke, likely to bloom. My grandmother died just a few years ago after a long time of Alzheimer's. This one's called Grandma, Grandma. I guess it's come to this. Plastic bowling pin set in place by a stranger in pink. You standing 8 feet away asking, where should I aim? Your form is more graceful than myrtles or almas, though your back makes a C and your shoes are too big. But they're not your shoes anyway. And who's got your glasses? I tell myself what I remember, waking in your cuckoo clock living room, cousins strewn like dead soldiers over the fat comforter, brown arms and hands sticking out everywhere, hearing the music of your crazy percolator, suck, 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 sigh, knowing you were just a buzzin' in the kitchen, and soon the grown-ups would be visiting and laughing through slow bridge games while we children evaporated, reappearing only to irritate for donuts or nails for the treehouse you'd never let us climb into if you ever saw it. Give me a spark, Grandma. Tell me you're bowling to beat the band. Laugh at the stupid way Eunice throws the ball or how that little fart in the sweatsuit comes dancing right in front of the pins. Push my hair back behind my ears, Grandma. I'll shake it into my face one last time. Grandma grew up in Lawrence, Nebraska, and 1999 I was in Hastings, which is nearby, judging little kids playing piano, and I decided I wanted to try to go back to Lawrence. Those who know me know I can't find my way out of my own house. I get lost in Lincoln. I've lived here all my life. So I just started driving out of Hastings and hoped I was going south. And eventually, somehow, a highway number connected with a number on the map, and I found Lawrence. And I wrote this longish poem called Pilgrimage, Lawrence, Nebraska, 1999. Himmelberg, Komicher, Rempe, Pavelka, Karmazin, Hofstetter, Osdick, Polmeyer. Listen to the stone litany, names of the old folks, dim vigil candles flickering. Karmazin, Bushcutter, Beike, Juergensmeyer, Breitfelder, Schroer, Evarista Feynman, Auntie and Hiram Ross, who lived across the gravel from Grandma. Their sitting room only visited a mystery of sunlight and violets. Sacred Heart's priest, back in town, must have been curious at the red-eyed, gray-haired woman bent over a pew mid-sanctuary. Somebody else, she was thinking, sat in this pew back when. Some kind of hot stuff. Butch and Norma's first grandchild, Marie Craning's kid, awed over real stained glass. Young Jesus instructing the elders, purple, gold, red, lead lines and bare feet, stations of the cross, Joseph carrying baby Jesus. She would melt to hear Panis Angelicus, get the tingle at the back of the neck during the litany, blessed be the name of God. Where's that girl now? Outside in the sun, I asked the priest, where's the Catholic cemetery? East of town, he says. Craning, not a familiar name. Schroer, still a few. I stop at the filling station, buy a V8 to use the bathroom. My grandpa used to own this, I tell the cashier, Butch Craning. Maybe, but she doesn't think so, she says, trying to be nice. But this is the only filling station in town. I know this angle against the street, the situation of the counter where Grandpa would set squares of Hershey for that other girl to take, one by one, till chocolated out. And I know where to find the bathroom, next to the musty garage full of fan belts and tires. I wash my hands thinking, he's not even parenthetical here, not even a cent in the air. Still, his name is carved on granite east of town. He could be up in heaven watching me walk among names that sound like stalled promises of protected days. Johnny and Frances Hubble, who found for me a tiger yellow kitten in their barn. City child, I liked to watch the goofy, noisy hens. That house is gone now. No parentheses for them either. And now I've found the baby, my uncle, James George. His life, I suddenly envy, used up in a month in 1935. Sounds of May make a ground base to my quiet weeping. Calf bleat, meadowlark, robin, bee. Grandpa can't see me here. There's no heaven to see from. What happens to flesh and bone in 34 years? What happens to granite in 1,000? What happens when I'm gone? No gray matter left to remember. And in that case, why, tell me, why does this sting so? I remember Annie Dillard in one of her books talking about those odd moments I think we all experience when we're aware of being aware. And she described it as stringing pearls on a long necklace of life. And this is about that, as is the next. Are you that girl? You come to at the wheel somewhere on I-480 inside Omaha in the dark. Where are you going? What is this driving? Whom do you love? When first you came to, your hand held $1 over a gold collection plate. Pink hand, green bill, adults' benevolent smiles at your shyness. That wasn't it. Why here? Why now? Once you lay drowsy on the back of the couch, absorbing winter sun. You thought, I'll always remember this. Here you are, middle-aged, ensconced, your hands over the steering wheel. Are you that girl? This one is called Meditation. My friend Mary said, I'm just doing it for peace of mind, contentment. If I get enlightened, I'll let you know. Not me. I'm after the blast of ecstasy. I want to return to that day in July when I knelt in the garden, uprooting from among baby's breath and lilies, badass crabgrass. Maybe what arose is what they call grace. The earth became as it is, flying giant in space. And my frame rested light, palm warmed on its benign brown husk. The sun was attached to my shoulder, and the air and the soil and the sun and the insects and the plants and I and this benevolent blue ball were of a piece. Fear broke and dissolved. I could have fallen up, fallen sideways, burned without comment in solar fire. And one more pearl. My daughter Faye once, when she was 4, said, how did the first people get in their houses? This is called Unstuck. How did that name, his, yours, mine, come to be black letters pulling over the curve of your back? Mothers on bleachers calling, you know you can, wait for a good one. Your mom speechless, cloudy sky, red uniforms, green grass. This life in the too small house with the coach and the batter, as brief as that pitch, important as the next swing. This is for family too, but it's for my husband Randy and Jim and Mary. It comes from a backpacking trip, and it's called Seed. A seed allowed to fall on soil, to grow as aspen till kicked to earth by snow melt avalanche, has come to this. Branches, rocks surrounded, rebirth hastened by match flick, sleepy-eyed members of this latter-day tribe gathering closer as cold closes in, as if in praise. Human experience poems are all over the place. There's love poems, loss of love poems, family poems, sickness, countless poems about death. But this one is called Where Are the Poems? Where are the poems of noises deep in the night, not subsiding? The robe pulled on, yellow circle of lamplight, infant taken, murmured to, face touching face. Wet cloth removed to pale, cleansing of unscarred skin, lotion, powder, soft fabric. Show me a poem about grogginess, become resignation, become the hand in the night, become the woman settled into an overstuffed rocker, smiling at the single-minded little one in the corner of her arm, furrowed eyebrows, searching mouth. Where's the poem of eyes locked, bodies going soft, working, belly hurt fading, mother weary yet savoring, knowing how brief is this possum time, infant crawling from womb to pouch, born but not yet separate, sweet grace flowing from one worn body on into this tender new one. This one is about motherhood, too. It's called You Will Meet the Eyes of Women. I was saying earlier, after I had my first child, I just thought, all these women have been through this. Why didn't they tell me? Why didn't somebody tell me? You will meet the eyes of women. While her toothless mouth pulls at your tender nipple, you mull the possibilities. 1, women postpartum have made a pact. Never, ever tell. 2, you are a sorry excuse for a mother not to be trusted with this fledgling. 3, you are, let's face it, unstable. Up to now, you and real failure had yet to meet, but look, groceries and sidewalks populated with women who've passed this test you never knew existed. Now you seem to be out of milk, and the mysterious creature bends at the middle and screams. There's lint on the floor, clothing to fold, hell to pay. Your crotch hurts. You want to sit on the porch, alone. The women at the grocery, even those buying National Enquirer and Twinkies, you don't hear them wailing, do you? Sucking it up, you place her writhing body over your knee. You rub her back in circles, singing soft. The secret is that women have no secret. It's just that you'd never have understood. Next time at the grocery, your daughter, if you're lucky, sleeping in the cart, you will meet the eyes of women, and you will begin to see what you couldn't have seen before. Recognition, tenderness, pity, even, of all things, envy. My daughters are 29 and 22, and my son is 5. Doing my part to save the world. Kind of a big quote. Gandhi said, everything I do will be insignificant, but I must do it anyway. Like, go in the bathroom, son. My net contribution to the planet may be, though the outcome remains uncertain, 3 heirs who reliably use the toilet. You do what's in front of you. I answer phone calls. I pay the electric bill. Maybe some people get to make big differences. Maybe I should be doing that too. For now, I seem to be working on a small footprint, not too much damage. I climb a low mountain. I denigrate myself, observes the psychologist. Practice radical acceptance, says the book. 2 friends in one day, no less, noting the psychic energy I spend on getting okay with being an odd duck. So I'm an okay odd duck. You're pretty much okay too. I examine my conscience, good recovering Catholic that I am. I may get the son to the potty, but I'm not so happy about doing it. I forget to offer it up for the souls in purgatory. But I'm not grinching at him, not usually. Contribution, no. Here I accept myself as a less than wholehearted mother. I take turns with Jackson, rolling a die, moving the appropriate number of squares on a grown-up game, thinking of a question. Can you give me a word that rhymes with cat? Dog, he answers, and then insists I name a word that starts with stinky. Why do I always feel I'm doing some damn duty? Do I think if I weren't rolling dice with my boy, I'd be feeding the hungry? But I'm folding socks, matching gray bottoms to gray bottoms, elastic top versus plain, throwing my husband's 24 identical white ones into his drawer unmatched. It's what's in front of me. Retiree socks in the rag drawer, grass-stained socks worn only when laundry's overdue. I want to be deeper, maybe write something that amuses or even helps. Nope, socks, socks, socks. And now Jackson is freaking about the little bump at the toe of the white sock he's pulled on all by himself. It seems that the work before me is to convince him that socks are like that, more or less. I give him words to live by. Sweetheart, this is as good as socks get. Classical music makes its way into my poetry quite a bit. This one's called Opus 110. The countryside is just beginning to think of fall. 10 ruby leaves on one green tree, sumac barely reddening. My daughter in the passenger seat seems older, all dark glasses and lipstick. College is fine, Anna says, except for geology. She hopes Steve isn't dating anyone in Virginia, though she knows that's irrational. She says she likes the piano sonata on the stereo. I tell her it's a late one. Beethoven was deaf when he wrote it, I say. Except in his head, she replies. He never heard this music, I say. Except in his head, she replies. This music is miles from Mozart, though they lived at the same time. Mozart never would have thought of those big hand chords, pedal down, fortissimo, fading to double piano, washes of arpeggios, the buzz of fast notes so far into the bass you barely can hear the tune. We cross the Platte and grow quiet, listening to the sad part, me wondering if Beethoven knew then that there was only one more piano sonata left in him. I tell Anna I'd read that Beethoven once chastened musicians who complained about such hard-to-play music. I'm not writing for you, he said. I write for the future. Well, here I am in 1996 on my way to Omaha with my daughter, no piano in sight, and in this sad melody, I hear music of leaves soon to fall. I hear the song of a mother whose child has grown and moved away before all the games were played, stories read. A string of single notes begins, and I ask Anna if she knows what a fugue is, but her eyes are closed and her jaw hangs loose. So I just listen, and before long, with the inevitability of that yellowing cottonwood in the creek bed, Beethoven moves from all sorrow to the happy rumble and delay and crash of that conclusion, and I, way into the future, have to wipe my cheek, breathe deep, and keep on driving. And that was for Anna, my daughter. So Karen and I were discussing what is a fugue. I was trying to come up with a way to describe what a fugue is that is shorter than the poem I have here named Fugue. Counterpoint is a relationship of melody lines one to another, and they're called voices sometimes. And a fugue is the top kind, the best kind of counterpoint. One idea developed, opposed, transformed, worked out. So this poem is called Fugue, and I wrote it for my nephew Ross when he was not even 2 days old. We spin out music you've set in motion, our parts being to persuade you, little one of benign countenance, that life is worth a long stay. Mama's voice an irresistible clarinet to Daddy's cello, 2 noisy brothers kissing and kissing such thin skin of your face. The aunt later, singing quietly, you already warming closer, contributing fine small sounds in counterpoint. I'm a big fan of silence, which seems wrong somehow for a musician and a person who makes poetry. I think it takes nerve to disturb silence artistically. And that's actually the title of a book of the manuscript that I'm trying to write. It's called This Deliberate Theft of Silence. If you could watch air set in motion by breath through this wooden tube, you might see waves rolling toward the shores of your eardrums. If your skin could listen, you might hear the wood's carved shape ride with the breather, one O into the next. How beautiful can be this molding of air, how audacious this deliberate theft of the perfect, fathomless center of silence. Thrust. You give the next chord a gentle push, not too loud, not too soft, exactly almost too late, helping it elbow its way into what the previous silence assumed to be conclusive. But instead, this F major climbing to this G minor, and then this spray of 30-second notes leading to a red toy boat in the bath. The hand's intuition that one no more can allow torpor then one can force momentum, not in water, not in sonority. No, the best thrust will come from the gentlest of urgings. In this way, a whole bathtub and a whole sonata traversed. When I am old, I will not go gently. I mean to go less gently. I'll learn not to hold my tongue. When they knock, I'll tell those black suit Salvation salesmen how full of it I think they are. I'll world peace them. I'll keep getting fatter, and I'll listen to Aretha Franklin loud, and I'll have more flowers and fewer vegetables. I'll sit out back sweating while the sun deepens my wrinkles. Pull a weed, tease the cat. Pull a weed, tease the cat. Marge, I'm playing the accordion. If you could imagine yourself, well, I'll start with this epigraph from Abraham Maslow, the psychologist you learned about in psych class that had the hierarchy of needs. He wrote this wonderful quote: "If you can be amused by the worm trying to be God, then in fact you may be able to go on trying and being arrogant without fearing paranoia or bringing down upon yourself the evil eye." This is a good technique. So imagine yourself to be a worm, and this title is Shovel. I try not to allow myself superiority even to the soil I eat, soil that surrounds my body, nor the 6 legs, 8 legs that come and go. I understand there is no use either in quaking before enigmatic rumblings from above. I try to accept without inner comment times of no water, times of blessed water, times of too much water. I try just to go about my business, it being for me to hide from beaked creatures, just as it is for them to snatch me up. I keep my thoughts on that time of mystery, breathing deep to endure hope and fear of its return, feeling still the brush against substance harder and colder than rock, the swift, effortless rising, the blast of sun and naked air. I pray for strength in anticipation of that return, pray for strength to hold accepting, though I can't know if I'll become erased or complete till I get there. And last, this poem has a new title as of today. It's called Benediction, and it has an epigraph from Billy Collins, a wonderful poet. We have become beautiful without even knowing it. In this coffee shop, table scattered, weekend happy, we have become beautiful. Jackets jaunty over shoulders of chairs, pairs of hands cupping mug after steamy mug, flapping our gums, a friend's heart problems, a granddaughter's new words, Osama bin Laden, riffing on some dumb phrase that won't go away. And we have become beautiful in hard chairs at the Unitarian Church, tracking a green paper, predicting whose child will play piano next, wanting nobody's child to get stuck on a wrong note, or play too loud or too fast or too slow. And we can't help but hear a kind of loveliness that does not deny, encompasses even the "I'd rather watch TV than practice" whine, and the "I've already played it enough times" whine, and the "I am not playing too fast" whine. And we have earned the right to swoon at the sight of tightened jaws and slightly crossed eyes on well-caressed faces, earned the right to hear what sounds like real music. And we have become beautiful without even knowing it, driving home from work this icy Monday, defrosters blasting inadequately, phalanxes of cars on the bypass skating with grace, shifting like a school of fish might, slow motion, making room for the red Ford inching up the on-ramp, pouring around the stalled Toyota on the shoulder, tired face after tired face topping pinched shoulders all the way awake. We have become beautiful without even knowing it.